Hello, and welcome to Awareness of Boundaries in your Peer Support Role. Take a seat, grab a snack, get your beverages, and let's get started. So, today we are going to be going over a few topics. Here I have listed some of the main points that will be addressed in this video. The first is being mindful of and setting your own personal boundaries. This one's important. It's essentially the first building block that gives you a great foundation to start with when we're talking about boundaries in mentoring relationships. After that, we'll move on to communication. Communicating your boundaries to your mentee is super important. Making the space for them to communicate their boundaries is equally as important, and we'll delve into that further once we get there. Moving on, we will also get into some ways to approach boundary sensitive issues and the concept of adjusting or renegotiating our boundaries when needed. Make sure you have got your pen and paper or notes app open if you would prefer to take notes during this module. Let's begin. But before we get all into that, it is important to recognize and ground ourselves on the land. With that, I would like to invite you to take a moment to pause and reflect on the land that you occupy. Think of one thing that you are grateful for about the land that you are on. In the meantime, I will acknowledge the traditional land that the University of Toronto occupies. The University of Toronto operates on the land of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. I believe that it is our duty to learn about from our past and continue to listen to the teachings of those around us and use our privilege to speak up to injustice. I invite you today to think about how we can continue this work of peaceably sharing and caring for the resources of this land and all the people who live here. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still the home to many Indigenous people across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community and on this territory. Thank you for sharing this moment with me across virtual space and time. So now we will get into it, starting with the simple first step of being aware of boundaries. You want to first start off by reflecting on your own personal boundaries. What boundaries do you have in your work life, school life, social life, religious life? If you are not immediately able to think of anything, that's quite all right. That's why we're here. It's extremely important for us as mentors to be cognizant of our own boundaries and take the time to thoughtfully set them so we aren't blindsided when something arises that feels like a violation of our boundaries. Not only that, but being aware of these boundaries also makes it much easier to communicate expectations with your mentee. By making the space and time for the consciousness of boundaries, you're helping to avoid physical and emotional burnout from your mentoring relationship. So, to sum, have the chat with yourself. Make sure to set those boundaries and be kind to yourself, your schedule, and your personal capacity when doing so. So, here we're just going to give a few examples of personal boundaries. We have work, school, social, and religious boundaries to start. Does your workday end at 5 p.m.? Is that a work boundary you want to set so that your mentee knows to not expect a response until then? Do you have the space, time, or specific knowledge to edit the school assignments of your mentees? That's a school boundary that you might need to set. Do you want to avoid casual social settings like bars and parties for your mentor-mentee hangouts for your own social comfort? Is that a social boundary that needs to be set? Would you prefer not to discuss religious or political affiliations? That might be a religious or political boundary you need to set. These are all examples of personal boundaries that you may have and might want to clear at the beginning of your mentoring relationship. So now that we've explored the concept of setting personal boundaries, it's also important to take the next step and communicate them with your mentee. A good way to introduce and begin your mentoring relationship is to share your boundaries with each other. You as a mentor have your own boundaries, and your mentee will have some as well. This mutual exchange of personal boundaries provides both parties with a solid foundation to continue the relationship. In communicating and respecting each other's boundaries, you're setting the stage for a strong mentoring relationship and a way to avoid future misunderstandings and miscommunications. At first, having this conversation can seem daunting and awkward, but it is totally normal to feel that way. Remember, the conversation does not have to be that way. You don't have to make it super rigid, but instead incorporate a light discussion of boundaries in your overarching discussion. Keep your boundaries firm while also keeping the conversation as light as needed in order to navigate both of your comfortability levels. It sounds tricky, but easier to integrate in a conversation than you might think. Give it a shot, and your mentee will also appreciate the opportunity to speak about their boundaries as well. Next, we want to talk about the boundary sensitive issues. And what I mean by boundary sensitive issues, and what to do when you're confronted with a situation that starts to blur the lines of your boundaries or openly crosses them. This can happen and it's okay. You might be faced with this issue, so a good course of action you can do is number one, remain calm and collected. Your feelings are valid, but make sure to not turn the situation hostile or get very defensive. Sometimes there can be honest mistakes made. Moreover, when the situation arises, you want to reaffirm your boundaries. Go over what your specific boundaries are in this circumstance and make it clear that they are non negotiable as well as deserving of respect. Next, you can set a reasonable action plan. How are you going to resolve this issue and how can you make sure it does not occur again? These are important things to consider when you're trying to move past a particular situation. Lastly, do you want to set the expectations surrounding follow up? What does the future of your relationship look like? Do the two different parties need time to recoup? How do you move forward from here? You might need to try some distance and set your next meeting for 2 weeks from now, or if it is a larger issue, you might need to employ a safe exit procedure to exit the mentoring relationship. There are many ways to follow up from a boundary sensitive issue, and you don't have to decide it in a rush. Take some time and come to a mutual agreement on how to proceed. Now, let's tackle a boundary sensitive issue that might come across at some point. Here's the scenario. A student you are mentoring wants to put you in as a reference for an award that they are applying to. They have emailed you multiple times over the weekend, even though you had let them know at the beginning of the relationship that you do not check your email during weekends. When you get back to them on Monday, they demand that you provide them with your phone number in case of emergencies like this arise again. Now let's take a moment so you can pause and think about how you would respond to this. Here's one way you might want to respond to such an issue. In staying calm, cool, and collected, you still want to remain within your boundaries. Don't respond to the email if you feel like you don't have the capacity to do so. If you cross your own boundaries, you risk responding out of frustration, which can further strain the mentoring relationship. Only respond when you are calm and have the time and space to do so. Once it is time to respond, lead with a reaffirmation of your boundaries. Make sure to firmly remind your mentee about the boundaries that were set and let them know that their actions did cross them. Ask them to be more respectful of your time and space. Make sure that they know that you don't appreciate being spammed with emails on your time off and make sure to get back to them at a reasonable time. Also, if you do not feel comfortable giving out your phone number, you don't have to. Let them know that it is also a boundary that you have and would rather keep the information private. Next, set a course of action through discussion with your mentee on why respecting these boundaries is important and what can be done in the future to avoid such situations. Be honest and set a realistic plan with them. And of course, in the follow up, you want to decide on if, when, and how your next connect with this mentee will be. How will you both move forward from this? This varies across mentoring relationships, but make sure to find the arrangement that is most suitable for the both of you. And finally, be prepared to adjust on the fly. Boundaries can often change across time and space. Look at how the COVID-19 pandemic has radically changed people's boundaries. Be ready to adjust and renegotiate your boundaries with yourself as you see fit. They don't have to be static. Boundaries can also change due to how your mentoring relationship develops over time, and that's perfectly normal. Make sure to set and adjust boundaries as needed here as well. One day you can do this by checking in with yourself often. Ensure that you communicate with your mentee as if anything has changed and give them the space to communicate if anything with them has changed as well. And that's a wrap on this video. To sum, here are some main takeaways from this video module on boundary awareness in your peer mentorship role. Remember to set your own personal boundaries. Make the space for a conversation about boundaries. Readjust your boundaries if needed and communicate that. And deal with boundary sensitive issues as they arise in a calm and collected manner. No need to rush. We hope you are able to navigate boundaries in your mentoring relationships smoothly and develop your own personal skills while doing so.